Well, yeah. So I had.
Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. Good evening, everyone. This is the Monday, April 14th, 2025 commission meeting. We have Commissioner Bob Isle joining us remotely on Zoom. And I guess we'll start just by calling the meeting to order and having a pledge of allegiance. Commissioner Montano, would you like to lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item C is approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. Can we just make sure we can see Commissioner Isle? Executive Director report out. Director Smith.
All right, thank you, Commission President Sabata. All righty. Okay, so this past week, I had the opportunity to go to Panorama and give a presentation just about the Port of Olympia to the residents there. And it was really fun, and they were very interested, very engaged, asked awesome questions. Some of them knew a ton of history about the port, and it was really fun to get a chance to engage with them. Definitely want to thank the Panorama staff for their hospitality and their support, and also to thank their residents and volunteers for coming out on what was one of the first sunny days we had this week. Then we also participated in the Thurston Chamber Green Business Awards. We were recognized as a Thurston Green Business, along with roughly, I think, 100 other Thurston County businesses. We want to thank the Chamber for putting this on every year and for highlighting innovative growth projects, emerging eco-friendly solutions, different trends shaping the various industries in the county, and all sorts of practical strategies we can adopt to be more environmentally sustainable and friendly. And speaking of the environment, Earth Day is coming up, and we're going to participate in two different ways this year. The first is we are get a group of port folks to participate in the Olympia Downtown Alliances cleanup on the Saturday before Arts Walk. So that's April 19th, this coming Saturday. And I believe it's from 9 to 11:30. So we're going to get folks together and go down there and help clean up downtown. And then on April 22nd, Earth Day itself, we are going to do what we did last year, is get folks together and go clean up some of our properties on East Bay and help make sure that they are looking good, and we have gotten rid of things that could be harmful to the environment. Right, and then this week we have several people participating in the Pacific Coast Congress of Harbor Masters and Port Managers Conference. So our Swantown Senior Manager Damian Egan, our Marina Manager Dylan Dixon, and our Facilities Maintenance Foreman Harold Hunter have all gone to this conference. It's focused on all things boating and marina related. So they're looking into best practices in marina management, industry strategies, and trends that are shaping the future of the sector. And so we're excited to have them come back and share what they learned with all of us and the boating community. Also wanted to give a big shout out to our Swantown Marina's harbor operations team. This past week, the Olympia Police Department and the Thurston County Sheriff's Office reached out to our Swantown folks to ask for their help in recovering a stolen boat that also had a whole lot of stolen merchandise on it. It was something in the neighborhood of $20,000 worth of merchandise on the sailboat. And in particular, Steve Movius was the one who went and took the boat and towed it over to the Swantown dock where the police could recover it. And they arrested the perpetrator on suspicion of first-degree theft and possession of stolen property. So we're very happy to have this partnership with our local law enforcement and glad to help recover some things for the local boating community. And then our 2025 event season is here. I believe it kicks off on May 4th with the Pacific Coast Shellfish Growers Association Slush at the Port Plaza. And we have everything from summer nights at the pier with some bands out at North Point, the Olympic Air Show, the Shoestring Circus is coming back. For folks who didn't get a chance to see that, it's really quite the experience. Southbound Block Party, movies at the marina, and as always, we support Olympia Harbor Days over, is it Labor Day weekend? Yes, thank you. I always get it Memorial Day mixed up. And last but not least, we value your input. Here, there's all sorts of opportunities to engage with us, and we look forward to engaging with folks. Report.
Thank you. All right, we're gonna move to public comment. This is the opportunity for public input. Individual public comments are limited to 3 minutes per person, and then that really nice music starts. You can find our guidelines in Resolution 2025-03, Article 6. But basically, we ask you to direct comments to the commission as a whole, not at individual port staff or members of the public. And we will all endeavor to be courteous in language and demeanor, confining remarks to those facts that are germane and relevant to the question or issue under discussion. We have 3 people signed up in the room for public comment. And we will start by calling up Sharon Coots.
Thank you, commissioners. Sharon Coontz, County, I live in the Thurston County. Here's what we keep hearing about the airport master plan. Yes, I'm back about that. Don't worry, this airport's traffic will never reach those numbers that you've heard from the plan. The plan is now going to be capable of taking 300 and some odd landings a day and 300 and some odd takeoffs a day. That's a lot of noise and pollution. But they say, oh no, that's okay. It's not going to happen. But here's what else we keep hearing is that the FAA has control over this. You cannot limit the traffic, period, once you've taken their grants. So to pay for airport work anyway. So the grant means that we have no local control over our airport for 20 years each time we get a new grant. And that's an impressive number of years. And it's an impressive loss of local control, which this airport used to belong to the people here of Olympia. So it's my understanding that for some reason, and maybe I'm wrong about this, that the port has asked for or is asking the FAA grant for money to repair this runway, part of a runway. It was covered in the master plan. It's not to strengthen it. That was done years ago. But we were told, well, don't worry about it because it's not to strengthen it because, and then you won't get larger planes, but that was done years ago. So yes, it can still take those larger planes that you've heard a lot of public comment that people don't really want. So that runway was already strengthened some years back in one of the incremental changes that was made after the public was told that there would be no more changes to the airport. So this will, as I understand it, just add more length back to it. That's fine, but all revenues from the new market area have to go to the airport. That money, the rents, the lease, their fuel sales, their airport leases and fees, that should be plenty to cover something like that, it seems to me, and to cover airport maintenance. You get a lot of money from all of those sources. And yet we reach out for those FAA grants. And every time we do, we're shackled for another 20 years. And it's another 20 years where we can get up and complain all we want. And we get told by people who work in the port on the airport issues, you know, nothing we can do about it. We took the grant. So I'm saying, let's stop taking those grants and see how we do. I think we can do pretty well. I don't see a timer. I know it's up there someplace. How much time do I have?
Seconds.
Thank you. I'm going to ask you to please stop taking the FAA grants. I'm going to ask you to let us regain control of our airport again and let the public have some say in our airport again. You have something that you usually consult with. It's called the consult level of public participation, but you don't follow through with the second half of it, which is the promise at the consult level is to consider the public input received and to provide feedback as to how that input influenced the decision.
Next, we have Betsy Norton on airport construction and gophers.
Hi, my name is Betsy Norton. Dear Commissioners, first I just wanted to briefly comment on the March 10th, 7th Amendment to the Panattoni lease that you approved, which relies on certified gopher-free parcels. The first parcel gopher survey is out of date per the US FWS screening protocols, which state that surveys are only good until October 31st of the following year. But Tumwater's permitting vests the applicant package until they start construction. So from a rules standpoint, the expired survey is all they need. From a wildlife risk point of view, however, this is not so great. The second parcel in those two parcels that you guys approved hasn't had a gopher survey at all. So it actually is not certified gopher free. So I would just urge you in the future when you're okaying these leases for these parcels to be very careful about the gopher free claim and make sure that it's valid. And I would urge you to ask for an additional survey if it's actually been 3 years like it has for this first one, because the gophers move around. And what we really want to do is protect them. Secondly, I'd like to reiterate the importance of waiting for the repaving of the airport runway until after September 1st, as the streakhorn lark breeding season is already underway. I saw in your agenda item that is the expected start date, but I didn't see that date in the contract anywhere. And if it's not in the contract, you know how things go. So I would just ask you to please put that in there so that we protect them during the breeding season. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have Ivor Melmore, Security of Marinas. Oh, I'm sorry, Ivor. Thank you.
I'm here unofficially representing some of the boat owners down on the marinas. I actually have a boat at One Tree Marina. But you may have heard about all the thefts that have been happening recently. And you also heard about the boat that was basically adrift. That's the third boat, I think, that's been adrift from these vagrant type boats that are out there. We've had probably about 20 different boats broken into over the last few months. Even one boat was stolen and he was using that. The problem I'm coming to you with right now is that there is no authority at all on the water. The Olympia Police don't have authority. The sheriff have a boat, but they're never out there. The Harbor Patrol, I understand they've overstepped their authority on several occasions, but and they have no real authority to do anything. But there is rules about 30-day anchoring in any place, which I would like you to enforce. And also we have a lot of boats, 4 or 5 boats on one anchor, and they are very likely in a wind to come adrift and bash into your marina or one of the big cargo boats here. So there is a safety concern for the port, but it's a very big concern about the jurisdiction. The guy was arrested the other day, and you ended up having the boat at Swantown on the dock while it's been unloaded, and I'm sure it's not very sightly because it was totally trashed. And this has been an ongoing problem. We have no jurisdiction, but we do. I mean, there are genuinely nice people out there just living on their boats, but there is a 30-day rule that we'd like you to enforce. And we'd like you maybe to consider giving the Harbor Patrol more authority. I know they note down the derelict and the let's say transient boats out there, but they don't do anything with that data. There's nobody following up. I would volunteer to keep an eye on it and find out who's been there 30 days or more, and then flag it ask them to move. They can move and then come back, but we've had so much problem recently that I don't know what you can do about it, but I think it's definitely going to affect the port. It's not only the reputation of the port, you get affected when boats are adrift and they bash into your cargo, and it's a big safety concern. Thanks.
Thank you for taking your time. Right off my son. Stop calling me. All right, do we have anyone online wishing to speak? I see Lee Reiner's hand. Ms. Reiner?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for taking public comment tonight. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I also had some comments regarding the Panattoni warehouse issue. I know that in past meetings, we actually had someone from the concerned citizens dealing with some of these large mega warehouse issues that have been um, going forward for Tumwater, such as the Panattoni warehouse. Many of us feel that E.J. Zeta, our former port commissioner, had written a very compelling letter. She was there during the Panattoni discussion, and I just believe that we have to relook at some of these issues, especially regarding gophers, as was mentioned before, critical habitat. This is a critical species. Basically, it's a canary in a bird cage. Once the little animal is under duress, it awakens us all to what is happening to our environment. And I know that there has been discussion about the Port of Olympia attending the Chamber of Commerce meetings, the Harbor Master meetings, the air show issues. All of these are lobbying efforts by big business, by industrialization of Tumwater, groups that want to industrialize Tumwater to make it another Tacoma. I think a lot of us in this room do not want Tumwater to be another Tacoma. And that's why we are here right now, because we love this place and we love this area. And so going back to this gopher issue, I was not aware that, these gopher surveys are time limited and have to be redone. I don't know if that had been under discussion with the Port of Olympia under these environmental issues. But the gopher issue is obviously huge. It has not been approved to go forward with building most of the proposed land because the gopher survey has not been completed. And I think the Port of Olympia is paying the state to do this gopher study. And I just am very concerned that there's so many issues regarding the industrialization of Tumwater, and do we really want to go forward with this? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Reiner. I see Jan Witt.
Debbie Patton was next.
All right. Okay. I was making a choice. Debbie Patton?
Hi, I'm here. I'm a 43-year resident of Commission District Number 3, and I'm sorry I'm not there in person, but I'm on grandma duty all this week. I'd like to speak to item 3 of the consent calendar, which is the Airport Capital Project Contract Award for the runway 1735 pavement rehabilitation and electrical improvements. On page 2 of the cover memo, which is on page 20 in your packet, it states that, quote, "This project is exempt from the apprenticeship utilization requirements of Port Resolution 2022-16. And by the way, this apprenticeship utilization resolution was the result of a POCAC project, of which I was a part in the year 2018. And my hope is that the contractor, Tushy and Sons, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, my hope is that they will utilize apprenticeships on this project, even if the project is exempt due to the FAA contracting requirements. I do know that Tushy and Sons are a union company, 70 years in business. They're located in Pierce County, and they do provide apprenticeships and training opportunities with local apprenticeship partners. They align with the operating engineers local 612 and 302, and the Laborers International Union of North America local 252, and the International Brotherhood of Teamsters local 313. It's not very often that the port undertakes a capital project that's large enough to utilize apprenticeships. And so I very much hope that Tushy and Sons will do so on this paving project. Apprenticeships are vital to train new skilled workers in the trades. And I've talked about that lots of times before, but it's super important if we want skilled workers, that we give them an opportunity for on-the-job training. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much, Ms. Patton. And we have Jan Witt.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Regarding the airport project, please stop accepting federal grant money for airport projects that limit local control of the airport. Regarding the Panattoni project, a main objective of environmental laws that were enacted in the 1970s was to avoid devastating situations that had historically occurred because decision makers approved plans and projects without knowledge of or considering their probable environmental impacts. Regarding the South Sound Commerce Center, the 2022 SEPA review conducted by Tumwater pertaining to the site plan and permit approvals for the South Sound Commerce Center did not adequately identify or address numerous probable impacts of environmental elements listed on the SEPA checklist. For instance, impacts of hundreds of daily truck trips on students attending a nearby middle school were not identified or assessed. In addition to that, in addition to those truck trips, there's been no assessment of the cumulative impacts of the South Sound Commerce Center truck traffic, in addition to the Center Street distribution center truck traffic, which Panattoni has submitted an application for. Until port commissioners and the public have been provided with sufficient information in the SEPA review that can help answer questions about environmental impact sufficiently, then port commissioners should not be asked to even consider rendering a decision about the South Sound Commerce Center. Please require that you are provided with an additional SEPA review that sufficiently answers important questions about environmental impacts probably likely to occur as a result of that project. Thank you.
Thank you. That completes our public hearing for today. We move to the consent calendar.
Chair, I think we may have additional public comment in the room.
Oh,
Hello, my name is Quentin Phillips. I'm with the POCAC, and I'm also a member of the District 3 area. I just want to support Debbie's comments about working with interns. I mean, we hear a lot about in the news about not having skilled labor for the things we need to do. How do you get skilled labor? Use interns to get there. I also want to be very supportive of the airport repair. It's a maintenance project in line with general operations. So there should not be anyone fearful of that. It's not going to hurt any animal or bird. It's just part of our day-to-day operations. So I want to support that. So thank you.
all right. We have 4 items on our consent calendar. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve the consent calendar.
Second. Any discussion? I guess, should I have stated the items? Is that okay?
You don't need to.
Okay, and then Commissioner Isle, I assume you are, well, I guess now I'll say all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Pending issues, regional transportation plan presentation. Alex, take it away.
Oh, well, I think tonight we have our guests, friends from the TRPC to discuss the regional transportation plan and just highlight what is in there and I think opportunities for the public soon to comment on it. So please.
Good morning or afternoon, evening. Good evening. So used to morning meetings. My name is Katrina Van Every. I'm the transportation manager for Thurston Regional Planning Council. Basically, what that means is I am responsible for making sure we meet our state and federal obligations. And part of that is the regional transportation plan. So I'm familiar with some of the commissioners here this evening, but not all of you, but TRPC, we've been working in the Thurston region for over 50 years and planning since 1967. We are a 23-member intergovernmental board, which includes the Port of Olympia as a member. And our mission is to provide visionary leadership on regional plans, policies, and issues for the benefit of all Thurston region residents. So we do a lot of work assembling and analyzing data. We act as a convener when we need to get parties together to come to a consensus on something. We build that intergovernmental consensus by having people involved in our transportation policy board, our technical advisory committee, which comes from jurisdiction staff, and of course our council. And then we conduct planning consistent with state and federal requirements. And so regarding the regional transportation plan, I'm just going to cut to the chase. If you remember nothing else from this presentation, I hope you walk away with this. When we're talking about our transportation system, what are the key takeaways people should know? First, that our planned land use and roadway capacity improvements alone, so the way we improve our transportation system over the next 25 years is not going to be sufficient to meet our regionally adopted targets, goals, and level of service or congestion standards. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we move through the presentation. Despite that, we can still make really good progress on those adopted targets and goals. And that with our growing population, it will lead to increased traffic volumes. And what we're seeing is that the projects in the RTP or the regional projects that we include in this plan will help mitigate vehicle congestion associated with this growth. So what moves you 2050, or what is the regional transportation plan? And really it is our plan for the region with regard to our transportation system over the next 25 years. We want a high functioning transportation system that not only talks about people being able to move around in their cars, but also people accessing transit, utilizing their feet and wheelchairs and also bicycles, making sure that freight can move through our community and get to the destinations it needs to go to. All of this is part of our transportation system. And that's what we're planning for on a regional basis. Our transportation system does not know boundaries, and we need to make sure that those jurisdiction boundaries don't cause issues with regard to the entire system. So the regional transportation plan is a 25-year planning horizon. So we're looking out to 2050. We are looking at all transportation modes, as I mentioned, and we also talk about our regional goals and policies. We have a set of recommendations in that plan for our transportation system. It includes a financial forecast. So we have a list of projects that are included in the recommendations, regional projects. And the plan has to be financially constrained. Essentially, it can't be a wish list of projects that we hope will somehow magically have money and staff to complete, but it has to be grounded in reality. And so we look over the 25-year forecast to try and identify how much funding we have in the region for the transportation projects that have been identified. If there's not enough funding for all the projects that our jurisdictions want to complete, we have to start cutting them out. And so it's an iterative process where we work with our jurisdictions and other transportation partners to see what these projects are and figure out as a region, as a whole, do we have enough money to complete the projects that we want to do in the next 25 years. And again, we're looking at regional projects. Local projects are also important. but we're talking about the regional scope and how our transportation system works as a whole. And then finally, we look at our future conditions. So if we're looking out to 2050, what does our transportation system look like with those projects that we hope to complete in the next 25 years? And how is our system going to function at that point? So in the regional transportation plan, there are specific areas of emphasis. Those are safety, equity, climate change, and greenhouse gas emissions, maintaining the system that we've already invested in, and those regional projects that continue to enhance transit options, emphasize system efficiency, strategically expanding the system where it's appropriate and where it makes sense, and then planning for local and state roads as a cohesive system. So I mentioned at the beginning that one of the things that we're seeing over the next 25 years is that those regional targets and goals that have been adopted on a regional scale, we're not quite there yet. What are those goals that we're striving for? So the first is to reduce traffic fatalities and serious injuries to zero. This has been talked about a lot, and it's a big concern for our jurisdictions and transportation partners. But what we're seeing is that the serious injuries and fatalities that are happening on roads in the Thurston region are increasing over time, and particularly vulnerable people. And by that, I mean people who are walking and those who are using a bicycle we're seeing those increase at a faster rate than the whole. And as a region, our goal is to reach zero fatalities and serious injuries by 2030. We are a long way away from doing that. The second target that we're talking about is increasing the share of households in urban areas and preserving our rural areas. So households in urban areas, Lacey, Olympia, Tumwater, Yelm, you can even look at Rainier and Tenino. Those are urban areas, some of them smaller or larger. But what we want to see is that 95% of housing happens in those areas. And while we're seeing a moderate increase in that share, it's not increasing to the point where we're going to hit our targets. Decreasing annual vehicle miles traveled per capita. So how many miles do you and I drive in our vehicles every year? What we're seeing over time is as our community continues to grow, more businesses are available and we are driving shorter distances. And that's great. On a per capita basis, we are driving fewer miles. And that trend continues into the future, and we're seeing that bear out in 2050. But we have pretty aggressive targets for vehicle miles traveled per capita, and we aren't meeting those targets where we're at right now. Decreasing greenhouse gas emissions. So this is a target that looks at all of our emissions as a community, not just transportation, but our buildings and other portions of our community. Buildings and energy is the #1 source of greenhouse gas emissions. Our transportation system is #2. It accounts for 1/3 of our greenhouse gas emissions. And so there are a number of things that are happening in the region to address this. We've got our regional, or Thurston County, Lacey, Olympia, and Tumwater have all adopted the Thurston Climate Mitigation Plan that calls for specific actions to take place so that we can meet targets. And the targets in that plan that they've adopted are the same ones that TRPC has adopted as a whole. But we're still not there. There are a lot of changes that are happening at the federal level. There are, things that are happening in the state, and we need to be paying attention to where things are going as a community. And we're not getting there as quickly as we would like to see happen. And again, those targets are also very aggressive. And then finally, the last one is to increase active transportation and transit use. So the first 4 that I've just talked about, we all have, those are adopted targets and that are specified and have something that says this is what we're reaching for. This last one is more ephemeral. it is a goal. We want to see that the increase in active transportation and transit use. But we don't have a target associated with it saying this is what we're striving for. We just generally want to see it improve. And we're not seeing it improve. As we look into the future in 2050, we're not seeing that share change to any great extent, whether you're looking in urban areas or rural areas or our smaller communities, or the kind of the outskirts of the urban areas. It's not increasing to any great extent, even with the great investments that our region is investing in. So that's what we're striving for. Those are the goals and targets that we're not meeting. But again, we are headed in the right direction. And there's a lot of work happening at the local level right now that isn't quite timed to what we're showing in this plan. So you may know that the cities in the county, in Thurston County, are going through a comprehensive plan amendment process or update process. Those updates largely are not going to be reflected in this plan because we're on the same schedule at this point in time. Intercity Transit, you may have heard, is also going through a revamp of their transportation system. That is not fully included in this plan either. And that's unfortunate, but it's just, that's the timeline that we're on. And I just want to put this out there that although we're showing that we're not hitting those targets and goals that we're striving for, one, we can see that, and two, there is work being done in the region to address it. And in 5 years, when we come back with an update to this regional transportation plan, I am hopeful that with the work that is happening in the region, things are going to be looking different. So how will our region change in the next 25 years? We are going to be adding 106,000 more people, 58,000 more housing units, 52,000 more jobs, and there will be 52,000 more people living near transit. And that's, by living near transit, I mean within a half mile of an intercity transit bus stop or a half mile of a rural transit route. During that time, we're going to be seeing 80 regional projects completed. These will add 18 miles of new roadways, many miles of general purpose lanes and center turn lanes, a lot of emphasis on our rebuilt by our bicycle and pedestrian facilities, including our trails. We're looking at 3 new or realigned highway interchanges and improved transit facilities and expanded service. And what we're seeing is that with these projects, we're not necessarily improving. Let me step back. What we're seeing is that these projects are helping us keep pace with that growth that we're seeing happen in our community. So some of the projects that I just want to highlight a little bit that might be of interest for the port and the folks that are really engaged here is some of the projects in the plan include capacity projects. So Martin Way I-5 interchange project, that is a project that Lacey is looking at doing, is improving that interchange with I-5 at Martin Way. Mottman Road improvements, City of Olympia and Tumwater are looking at adding more pedestrian and bicycle improvements along that road next to SPSEC and the warehousing that's happening in that area. We have Tumwater focusing on the Brewery District Transportation Project and also looking at Tumwater Boulevard and the interchange improvements there. We have a new connection for US 101 and the West Olympia Access Project. That's something that Olympia is spearheading at this point. WSDOT, of course, I-5 is a backbone of our community when it comes to moving a lot of traffic and freight. And so that is a big focus for our region as well. I just want to note for those in the audience that when you look at the Nisqually bridges, 1 out of 10 vehicles that crosses those bridges is a truck or large vehicle. So we have a lot of freight that moves through our community. And then studies that help us set the baseline for the work that's happening in the region. I-5 and 93rd Avenue interchange improvement study is something that Tumwater is currently working on. We have also at TRPC, we're working on an emergency incident management detour route improvements. That's a mouthful, but basically what happens when I-5 breaks? How do we get people around and moving on detours in an efficient way? We have the freight mobility strategy that will be kicking off in the next 6 months. We have the Regional Transportation Safety Action Plan to look at those issues that we're seeing around fatalities and serious injuries in our region. And we have a transportation resiliency strategy that says when a large event that breaks our transportation system happens, how do we get our system back up and running? Because transportation system is the backbone of commerce. It's the backbone of making sure people can get to and from their homes and to services. And so that's another piece that we're looking at. So here we are on the tail end of this update process. We just completed the draft in March. It is out for public review at this time. That was released last Friday, and the public comment period will go through May 9th. We will take those comments and respond to each and every one of them, and take that information to our Transportation Policy Board and ask for a recommendation. And then in July, we anticipate council taking action to adopt a plan. So that's it. I thank you for your time and happy to answer any questions you might have.
I have a comment. I serve on the TRPC board with Katrina. And one of the things that I think is really relevant to us is we've been having the conversation about how the policies and zoning that the jurisdictions are crafting impacts meeting some of these goals. So if we're looking at more density and preserving our rural communities, but we're creating policies that are causing more sprawl, then we as a region need to collectively look at that. And what pops up for me with the port is a conversation about, there was a study about industrial availability that TRPC conducted. We don't have enough industrial capacity, and some of it is actually quite far from I-5, creating more greenhouse gases, more travel on highways. And so as we're looking at siting industrial, having it close to I-5 is getting us closer to meeting those regional goals. And as we are governing, we're looking at how to get to yes on things that are not always easy. So I really appreciate that TRPC looks at it from a data-driven, all of the jurisdictional partners coming together, and just continuing to partner with you guys for that information and really zooming out rather than all the little individual pieces. So thanks, Katrina.
Last year to sit on the Transportation Planning Board, Policy Board. And one of the things I was wondering about, you briefly addressed in a slide here, which is the freight mobility study, because we talked about projects, but none of it was was really focused on the issue of 1 in 10 of the vehicles passing the Nisqually Bridge being a truck. Hearing at a interesting meeting today with the Pacific Northwest Waterways Association, anticipating that one of the impacts of tariffs and the different changes in how freight will be fees on ships will be even more truck traffic. So can you tell us a little bit more about the freight mobility work that's planned?
We haven't actually got it up and running yet. But the intent is to look at the freight system and what we have and how we can help support movement of freight through the community and also within the community. But beyond that, I don't have any details for you.
And can you go back to, the slides weren't numbered, but there was one where you had sort of what's anticipated in terms of growth, this one. So one thing, when I hear from constituents about our own master plan from the airport, there's a lot of concerns when we project into the future growth. And I wanted you to maybe tell us a little bit about, this isn't like a goal that you've set at TRPC or the local governments have set. How do we come to anticipate this growth, and under what authority are we putting these numbers together? Tell us more about how we come to this.
So first off, when we talk about population growth in our community, those projections actually come from the state. And so we work with those population projections and take that information and put it into our transportation model. So we look at land use, we look at people, how many people are going to be living here, and housing units that have to be in place to support that population. And therefore, with those things, what is the job growth that we're going to see as well. So we also have in our transportation model, a transit system. And so when we take all those pieces together, that is how we pull that information together. I am not the person that does housing unit projections or our job projections, employment projections, but that is a piece of work that TRPC does. We have a population and housing employment data set that we update every 3 to 5 years. And so we have staff on at TRPC that tracks that. When we look at our growth, we have a lot of statistics around what the jurisdictions are permitting, where they're permitting, what the land use is that supports that, et cetera. And we also pull information from the feds to see what is our job, what's our economy look like with regard to jobs, and what are the different types that are in the community. So a lot of this information is actually coming from other sources, and we compile it and bring it together to develop our transportation system and project into the future.
I think that's similar with how we do our airport master planning. I just wanted to point out one thing. You gave away the big picture is that we're not on track. But I think if we were able to see, and I don't know if this is easy afterwards to share, but that, for example, in last year, we see that there's 25 years between now and 2050. How many housing units came online last year, or how many jobs? I mean, I think that would help appreciate this. Is it 350 units? Okay, so I mean, I think then you start to understand what we're talking about here. And so, I wonder if buried in all of those reports, that kind of information is there. It's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, we do have in our chapter 5, which is our future conditions, we do set the baseline and give you the trends. And so you will see has our population changed over time. Same with the housing units. I don't know that we did that with the job numbers, but we do have the statistics and that track what's actually happened in the past so that we can forecast and project into the future.
And if you Google Thurston Regional Planning heat map, the data that they have is so cool. It shows you like the density of neighborhoods and it's really cool.
Thank you for that. Director Smith, was there, when you asked them to come, was there something you were trying to make sure we understood as a commission about our regional?
We asked to come.
They asked to come. They wanted to share the regional transportation plan.
Yes.
Okay, well then, terrific. Thank you.
But on that note, we are, as an organization, working more collaboratively with TRPC, which historically there's been a little bit of a gap there. So that's very exciting. So thank you for extending the olive branch back.
Yeah, and I would just also say that as members of the community and an important piece in our transportation system, whether it is freight coming to or from the port or to the airport or to the warehousing areas that you have, all of this is important for you and for us to know your feedback. And so I really welcome and hope that we hear from the port during this public comment period so that we can incorporate the information that we get back from you back into the plan and make sure that what we're showing and representing is representative of the work that you do as well.
Thank you very much. We have no items on the action calendar or the action other calendar. So with that, we move to the advisory calendar and invite up Patty Belmonte, CEO of the Hands-On Children's Museum, to give us an update on our long-term partnership. And it looks like Mike Reed plans to join her at the same moment. Oh. It's the order of
So anxious.
Yeah, so I will be presenting next, but I did just want to introduce Patty Belmonte, CEO of the Hands-On Children's Museum. This is a long-running partnership between the Port and the Hands-On Children's Museum, and so tonight we'll be teeing up an exciting next step in that relationship. I, as a part of my presentation, was initially geared up to maybe tell some of the story of the Children's Museum, and that would have been a mistake. The best thing to do is to invite Patty up and have her tell her story. So with that, I just want to hand the mic over to Patty, who's done an incredible job for this community in her leadership in bringing the Hands-On Children's Museum to the place that it is today. So with that, I'll hand the mic over.
Thank you, commissioners, for giving me this opportunity. I'd like to let you know that we have several of our board members wave your hands in the audience. The reality is that it's a whole community that's helped build this children's museum with leadership from our many boards over the years. And for those of you who don't know, I have coveted being on the Port properties for many years, long before we were. And I could just imagine how we could contribute to the economic health of the Port and the environmental health as well, and make this a great place to visit. And so let me tell you a little bit about the project. So first of all, we've been in our new home 13 years. I can't believe it, but we have. And before we moved, and since we moved, we continued to be the most visited youth museum in the Pacific Northwest every year. We have one museum that has expanded and is larger than we are, and that's the Imagine Children's Museum in Everett. But we still are drawing more people, which just amazes me. We do have more visitors per square foot than any of the nation's 470 children's museums, which is a nice way of saying that
You want to expand?
that we're putting a lot of people in a small space. We also are a nationwide leader in access, something we're very proud of. We served, of our 300,000 visitors last year, about 140,000 came in some type of free or reduced program. We are also really appreciated for our quality early learning experiences, which we think is one reason people keep coming back. And we are a consistent Best of Award winner. We take very seriously that destination museums like Hands-On have to enrich the quality of life for our community. And we believe in that, and we try to improve the community and offer programming for families that live here. We also are bringing a lot of visitors into our area and into Port properties. We have visitors from every state, and last year, 20 different countries that came to Hands-On. This is our fire rescue spectacular, if you don't know. And what do young children love? They love firefighters. In terms of drawing out of town visitors, I wanted to share this with you. Every year we do extensive surveys on our visitors, and there are many destinations that they visit, including the waterfront, but the farmers market typically comes up #1 as our visitor destination in conjunction with a visit to the museum. I put this quote up here because we hear about families that visit Port properties too, and you can see that this guest said, "One of the best days I've had all year with Grandpa, Anthony's for lunch, and Children's Museum after. Thanks for coming up to the Pacific Northwest and spending priceless time with your boys. We love you." So we do ask our visitors to support the properties here on the Port, and we have partnerships with Mercado and the farmers market and several of the businesses that are on Port property. We also, as you know, have the exhibit in the museum that replicates Port business, and that's really important because we want to connect young children to the place they live. So in terms of museum attendance over the last 30 years, I thought you'd be interested in seeing this. When I started, we had about 15,000 visitors a year. And then I've shown you in the green columns where we expanded and how much we grew during those expansions. The proposed 2028 numbers will depend on how much square footage we're able to add. And there is a direct correlation there. And so we are doing a progressive design project, and we will know more when we get into the design how much square footage we'll actually be able to add. This is what I was talking about before. We have 30 free and reduced programs. And our largest program, the EBT Family Access Program, is underwritten by Washington State Employees Credit Union. And you can see that we launched that program in 2017. We were overwhelmed when we served 12,527 visitors that year through that program. And then you can see our highest year in 2023, we served 38,422. We are a mid-sized museum, but we have a king-size attendance. And one of the things that we have done is tried to use our building in every which way we can. So since 2017, we've extended our hours. We're open 7 days a week, and we are open 9 to 5. We have added multi-day events. So instead of coming to Boo Bash one day, and that was 3,000 people, we decided that we would have a week of Boo Bash to help spread them out. We've tried selling time tickets. It's really challenging because if you have a young child and they have a meltdown, there's no way you're going to stick to that time ticket. We have promoted after-hours parties and field trips. Before the pandemic, we did about 60 after-hours events a year. And that business is coming back now, but we also do a lot of family reunions, parties, et cetera, after hours. This is just another little way of showing you. We are the first part of the graph there, and you can see our 28,000 square feet and our 315,000 attendance, and that 315 includes some offsite as well. And the other numbers do as well, but you can see that other museums have larger footprint as well as larger outdoor spaces. Surprisingly, we don't think about it as yeah. So in terms of the region, museums that you're familiar with, we don't think about it as much, but typically they don't serve as many visitors. I put a couple children's museums up there so you could see Kids Quest in Bellevue at 200,000, Seattle Children's Museum also at 200,000. So we're in a smaller community, but we're drawing a lot more people. We just heard from the TRPC, and Thurston County is projected to grow. On my numbers, I have it, I think, through 2045 or something, or 2040, but it is projected to grow, and that hasn't changed. We also just did a study at the Visitors and Convention Bureau, asking visitors what are key drivers to this area, and you can see the number 1 through number 10 there, and I circled family fun, attractions, and museums, and the port ran its own surveys and got much of the same information. So what are we doing? We would like to take a campus approach to the expansion. And, when we developed this, we are serving right now field trips in 6 counties. We do have South King County that visits us as well. We didn't expect that when we first built this building. And because we serve a lot of kids from the coast and Lewis County and down to Vancouver, we really need to think about all of those buses coming and think about the traffic pattern there for the buses. Also more of an entry area. And because right now you park in the back and walk around to the front, it's a little bit of a interesting way of doing it. And then parking, the reality is we would love more families to take transit. But when you have very young children and you have strollers and things like that, it's really hard to get them out of their cars. So we desperately need additional parking. And there is, one day one day I'm sure we'll be working together on a parking complex because the money will somehow magically appear that will allow us to do that. But for now, we would like to extend the parking, and we've been leasing parking from you for 3 or 4 or more years now across the street from the Children's Museum. Let me go back a sec. So you can see on there what we're planning. We're planning that expanded parking, the bus loading, a flex event space, which I have another slide on, a traveling exhibit gallery, because one thing we had to compromise on when we built this building was taking out our traveling exhibit gallery, but it gives you something new. We're very programming heavy and we feature lots of artists and scientists and guests, but we'd love to have a space where we could bring in exhibits from other areas. The Kids Culinary Institute, this has been something we've been building up for many years now. And we'd like to have an intentionally designed cooking area for kids and for the classes that we offer. Right now, we have to haul all of our cooking stations into classrooms to make it work. We also are, and until COVID, we were always sold out in preschool. And now we are close to sell out. And the problem is, guess what? Everybody wants preschool in the morning and we don't have enough classroom space to accommodate that. And then we're doing 70 or more camps every summer, and then spring and winter break as well. We would love to have enough room to do a STEAM tween lab. That's one of the most common requests that we get is, my child is aging out. Do you have something? And there's some really interesting work being done around the country at other children's museums. And we'll be visiting Albuquerque and they have a STEAM lab for tweens. So we're going to take a look at that. And so right now, again, we're a progressive design build project. So we don't have a design yet. This is some work we did to just begin to get pricing and that sort of thing. But we will likely have an additional building and connect those buildings through a sky bridge or a ground bridge of some sort. And this looks sort of off scale because it looks like the second building is much larger when it would not be larger than the existing building, but it's kind of cattywampus off center a little bit. And that was what we looked at. We want to keep the natural wood like we have. And we want to have it look similar. It's a building that's really well loved. And so we'd like to keep that look. And it was designed to look like the warehouse district that the port once was right there. This is to give you an idea of some of the inside. And this would be the traveling exhibit gallery, which would connect to the outdoors and give us that flex space that we really need. And so we're working on a $35 million campaign right now. This project was built in part with Public Facilities District funds, and a very simple way of saying that just some of the sales tax revenue that's spent is retained within the jurisdiction, and it must be used for tourism promotion projects. And so we know that in the last few years, the legislature extended the PFDs, and in Thurston County, there's 2 PFDs. The RAC in Lacey and the Children's Museum. And so the legislature extended so that we can collect funds for a longer period of time. And that is to allow buildings to improve or expand. We are targeting the rest of the campaign. You can see there from our board of directors who are making their gifts right now. Building for the Arts grant, we've been approved and we're hopeful that it's being reappropriated in the current work of the legislature right now. And then we have met with foundations that have supported us in the past. Our federal and state funds, it will depend. It's a fantasy year. So we will have to see about that. And then 3 million in individual and business gifts. So sponsorships and individual giving in the community. So we're working on all of that right now. And let's see. Oh, this slide just shows you how our budget has grown over the years. And each time we expanded, how it grew, just so that you can see that we're tracking on being responsible about our growth.
Do you employ?
So right now we're about 60. We have in the summer when we go up with seasonal, we've been up to 80 in the past. It just fluctuates depending on how many employees are working part-time. And then we are looking at a grand opening in the winter of 27, 28. We're in the process is moving along right now. Parametrics is our project management firm, and they are working on everything we need to do to be ready for the progressive design build process. So with that, can I answer questions for you?
So cool. Exciting.
Exciting. Super exciting.
Thank you. And we thank you for being our partner and support for so many years. We've done a lot together and we really appreciate it.
Okay. So again, for the record, I'm Mike Reed. I'm your Community and Economic Development Director. And so I am going to show you how we take this concept that was just presented and take a potential next step. So tonight I am presenting an advisory on a potential purchase and sale agreement with the City of Olympia to accommodate the expansion that you just learned about. So I'll be hitting a couple of points here. Just a little bit of background about this East Bay redevelopment project. I will go over the purchase and sale agreement, sort of an overview. The full purchase and sale agreement is attached to the agenda packet for those that want to review. I'll do a quick alignment for how this aligns with our Vision 2050, and then April 28th is when it would come forward to the Commission for actions. And there's actually a series of actions that we have to take to be able to sell a piece of property. It's a little complicated, so I'll try to preface what that will look and feel like for your next commission meeting. So this started in the 2000s. I was actually here the last time that we presented a purchase and sale agreement to the city for this piece of property. And so you've also just heard me say to the city. So we actually don't sell the property to the Children's Museum. It gets sold to the City of Olympia. The city actually owns the property and has an operating an agreement and sort of a lease-like situation for the structure that the Children's Museum is in. So this was actually part of a piece of envisioning that we had for what we called the East Bay District. We labeled the project Energizing East Bay, and it was to take a portion of port property and city property and sort of reimagine how this place could change with time. And it was really focused on what they, at the time, they called the 3 E's. It was education, environment, and economic renewal. And we partnered with the Children's Museum, the lot expansion project, the wet center that they had done there, and then City Hall was sort of, it ended up being outside of this specific property, but it was sort of in the glow of the project, if you will. Here's a before and after. So that was what it looked like in 2006. You can see there was a very large warehouse on the property. It is seen better days is the nice way of sort of saying it. It sort of aged. It was not the greatest condition. Zoom tight. And you can see the area was largely used sort of around there for sort of lay down areas and different sort of surface uses. And on the right, you can see we still have some potential expansion and new development opportunities to continue. This is actually a picture from 2012, showing where it looked like at that point in time. And you can see up on the sort of right-hand corner, future development site. That is the property in question that we are talking about today. Now it's a little backwards. It takes a second to sort of reorient.
I see now.
So Marine Drive is moving up sort of around the corner, and then that is Olympia Ave kind of cutting through. So here you can see another rendering of the location there. So it is adjacent to the parking lot that currently exists. It's north of the Children's Museum. There are 2 parcels in question. One is 0.92 acres. The other parcel is 0.65 acres. We reached a negotiated sale price with the city of Olympia of 2.1 million. Both entities had appraisals. Those appraisals came a little bit different of value, and we negotiated ultimately through some of the terms that were negotiated what the sales price should be. The closing date that is anticipated for this project would be November 7th, 2025. The city of Olympia does need some time to be able to coordinate some of the funding that they would be putting together for this. And they just wanted to be a little bit farther out before they closed on the property. The purchase and sale agreement, as a part of the deed, will have an environmental covenant attached to the property. And that is actually, it's Exhibit C of the purchase and sale agreement, which is attached to the cover memo. And what that is, it's a covenant that goes between the new buyer, the city of Olympia, and the Department of Ecology. And it talks about how you can use the property, recognizing that there is some contamination underneath the cap of the property. So if you dig underneath, and you can actually even see it in that picture. Maybe I've got another, let's see. Maybe this is a little bit better. You can see in the 2006 picture there's areas where it looks like there's like crushed gravel on the site. That's acting as a cap to contamination. So if you dig through that gravel, you have to test the materials that come out of the ground. If they exceed certain contamination levels, they have to be removed of and disposed of in a proper location. If they're below that level, you can reuse them on site as part of the construction project.
Mike, we've heard, through the time I've been here, at least from constituents, really worried about how do we ensure that when we have land that we put into use, that it's safe for people.
Yes.
I'm sure the Children's Museum would never do something that would be harmful to all of our kids running around.
Yeah.
But I think you've mentioned it being a cap.
Yes.
And can you say anything more about that?
Absolutely. This property has probably been investigated more than any property that the port owns, and it has been through very thorough rigor through the Department of Ecology. In this instance, we have to lean on those that are the subject matter experts and the regulatory authorities on this work. It isn't us, it is the Department of Ecology. So Department of Ecology has created the pathway to be able to use that property and how you would do it. And that is what is captured in the environmental covenant that gets attached to that piece of property in perpetuity. So it never goes away. It is attached to the deed, and it articulates how you can use it and what the testing thresholds are and those things. So it has been through our participation with DOE. You want to add something?
I just want to add something because this came up and we listened to a lot of concerns before. And what we decided to do, it was not a requirement of ecology on our outdoor space that we remove soil so many feet down, but we chose to do that and bring in fresh soil because we wanted to take the extra step. So that was in our outdoor space where kids were actually going to be contacting with the dirt and that sort of thing.
That's terrific. So there's a balance. You went farther than possibly necessary in places where children will be engaged in the ground, but we're happy as someone who has to also finance your project to go with a cap for where the building will also be kind of effectively capping on top of it. And I think that's really important because we can't just always eat up green space for everything we're doing. So I think it's great that we're putting this to really beneficial use.
There's also a negotiated deed restriction associated with the transaction as well. So the city, when they buy this property, they can only use this property for a children's museum. It's actually, it's a restriction that gets attached to the deed as well. And
or it reverts to us.
There is a reversion language. So if they ultimately decide, hey, this isn't what we would like to use this property before, they have to come back to us. And there's a whole process. It does get articulated in the purchase and sale agreement, how that reversion process could move forward. Here's another rendering of the location. It's that spot sort of in green.
Wait, don't go past it.
Okay.
Yeah. So in Vision 2050, which was our most recent, very big engagement with all the people about our waterfront and our community, there was a desire for better connectivity between the Port Peninsula properties and downtown.
Yes.
And we know what an incredible economic driver the Hands-on Children's Museum is. So since you have this here, I just want to ask you, as you move forward over the next year in your role, to figure out, can we work with the museum and the city of Olympia in figuring out how to make a friendly pedestrian pathway, not just pathway, like corridor, whether it's little flags or something that leads people straight into the city to spend their money, would be a really great idea.
I completely second that. And let me get to this is what you're talking about.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, perfectly. So this project, I would argue, very clearly does align with one of your goals in Vision 2050. You have the goal, it's associated with Destination Waterfront, turn the Port Peninsula into a premier destination by adding attractions, increasing accessibility, and maintaining a clean and safe environment. I think that partnering with the city and the Children's Museum to have them expand is an excellent way to bring that forward. There's number 12 that talks about working with the city to create a more welcoming environment to downtown. I think that builds off of your point. The ball is in our courts to continue that. How do you make this feel more accessible? How do you make it feel more inviting? How do we address some of these pedestrian access points and bring the 315,000 people that are visiting the Children's Museum not only up to the farmers market, but into the downtown core? And what is it? How do you make that happen? There's a couple of other things too. And Patty did mention this one. There is a need to talk about parking and access strategies in downtown. This will continue to add some pressure to that continued need of a conversation. And then there's number 18 or action item 18. It says attract another anchor tenant to the Port Peninsula. I would say that while we aren't attracting another anchor, we are helping one of the biggest anchors to the Port Peninsula and helping them expand, which I think is just as valuable in something like that. So for your April 28th meeting, there will be a series of 4 actions that you can take. You can take them all as one, so we can have a long motion in which you couple all of these, or we can go down the list and take them one-on-one. But there's 3 resolutions that would be brought forward. The first resolution is to surplus the property. So to recognize we no longer need this piece of property for ongoing port operations. So we will surplus and sell this piece of property. Your second one is to amend the comprehensive scheme of harbor improvements that would remove this piece of property from port ownership and from our comprehensive scheme. Your third one then ultimately authorizes the sale of the property. So there's those 3 resolutions. And then there is a 4th that actually approves the purchase and sale agreement and authorizes the executive director to be able to enter into the agreement and fulfill the obligations therein. That is it. I would add one more piece. This will be going to the city council. They have to approve the purchase and sale agreement as well. So this will be going to them in the May timeline. So we're just a step ahead. I think that's good. And they're very excited about this project as well. And I can share that as a former insider. So this is there's another piece.
Let the record reflect that they're afraid of us talking to any further staff.
One piece that I do want to call out, and I think it's noteworthy. It does get referenced in the cover memo for Patty's presentation, and you will hear me frequently reference the RCWs that guide the port and give us the powers to do the things that we do. There is an RCW 5308255 that talks about the port's role and statutory authority in participating and leading the promotion of tourism and tourism facilities. This is absolutely in line with what ports do and what ports are designed to do, is to support these kinds of facilities. So I just want you to know this isn't something wildly out of the blue or divergent or unique for what ports do. This is how a relationship with the farmers market and the previous children's museum, this is how we do those things. So just wanted to let you know that that's the statutory authority.
Terrific. Question?
I just want to expand on something Chair Savada said about the connectivity piece, and Patty talked about it with the Experience Olympia and Beyond Destination Master Plan. It's very clear that that connectivity piece is something that we need to invest in to be successful in the build out of downtown and the peninsula. And so not missing this opportunity for us to piggyback on this expansion of the Children's Museum, of thinking creatively about what that could look like. We've talked about shuttle service. We've talked about little rolling umbrellas, like, you know, but how do we, and potentially parking synergies, probably gonna not have the timing be aligned for some large parking structure, but maybe, you know, maybe down the road. So I think it's so exciting, and we are so thankful for all of you guys and what you do there, and are hoping that we can continue to add more to the Port Peninsula so that it can be good neighbors for you, and improve the environment, because you are a little bit on an island out there still, and it would be nice. So thank you very much. It's fun to have a community asset that almost everyone is very excited about. Almost everyone. Thank you very much.
Good job.
Any further questions? We're good.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
And we don't like selling property, but only for you. Yeah, right.
All right, the next item is the South Sound Commerce Center ground lease. Warren Hendrickson, Director of Operations, joining us remotely.
Good evening, Commissioners. Warren Hendrickson here, Director of Operations. If the technology has supported this from a remote location, I trust that you are able to see the presentation in full presentation mode. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. And I want to give a huge shout out right at the outset here to Commission Coordinator Missy Goodell, because we practiced and rehearsed this to ensure that this would come across as seamlessly as possible. So this would not be possible remotely without Missy's help. So thank you, Missy. Also, Commissioners, I want to advise you that I am operating on a single monitor. So therefore, I may not see hands raised. So please feel free to interrupt me verbally if you have any questions during my presentation as we go along. So tonight, I'm pleased to bring before you the South Sound Commerce Center ground lease. This is an advisory item. There is no action required this evening. The project is entitled the South Sound Commerce Center. The tenant is Panattoni Development Company. I believe in the room in person tonight is Brenda Foch, the development manager for Panattoni. The location of this project is the Newmarket Industrial Campus. And what's notable about this presentation and this item before you is that it is the first ground lease within the 196 acres of option property within the ground lease agreement. This will be a fairly lengthy presentation because there's a lot of ground to cover. So I am laying out here an agenda of the topics that I will bring before you this evening. First, background, specific location and the depiction of the site, the term sheet that governs the actual ground lease conditions. And then we will address, as we have begun now, as a means going forward to explain the significance, primarily financially, but also otherwise, with regard to the port, to the city, in this case, the city of Tumwater, and the wider community. We will also discuss how this ground lease aligns with the Vision 2050, focus goals, objectives, and action items, talk specifically about the lease form review and some of the revisions that took place from the template that was originally approved by the Commission in December of 2023. The environmental considerations, it will also give me an opportunity to address some of the public comments tonight. And I will bring those into the discussion later. Project implementation steps upon ground lease approval and execution, following next steps, and then finally some questions and comments. So for background, the option to ground lease agreement was executed in July of 2020. There have been 7 amendments to this option to ground lease agreement to date. The most recently approved one was on March 10th, 2025, the Seventh Amendment, which, as you recall, would allow development to take place before a habitat conservation plan approval by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. The standard lease form upon which the ground lease is based was originally approved by the Commission in July of 2021, and it was further amended as a standard lease form in December of 2023. This ground lease is not subject to the Habitat Conservation Plan. The parcel has been certified free of the Mazama pocket gopher. And this is an important part, and it was enabled to go forward as a ground lease because of the Seventh Amendment. And it's important to note about this process here, and I'll address it now rather than later under environmental, is that the certification process is a city process, not a port process. And the port pays nothing for the surveys of the property determined the gopher presence. That cost is borne 100% by the developer. All the port has done is provide permission to the developer and its consultant team to access the property for a survey and investigation. That was done. The city's process is what's formalized is even when a parcel is observed to be, per the city's rules, to be certified by the consultant to be gopher free, that doesn't necessarily mean it's certified for further development at that point. That action only takes place with the written formal site plan review approval by the city of Tumwater. Again, purely a city process. And for the parcel that's before you tonight, the South Sound Commerce Center, that formal site plan review approval was issued on March 15th of 2023. And it's that action that memorializes the gopher free from that point on. And that's done between the city and the Wildlife Service and Department of Fish and Wildlife. All major agencies are part of that and are well aware that the city's issuance of that review approval is the final action. And this particular agreement is included in your packet under Exhibit H. With regard to the other parcel that's immediately adjacent to the parcel tonight, there was some question about whether it was already certified, whether surveys had actually taken place. And just because there may be questions that may have come up, the parcel immediately to the south of the one we're talking about this evening, they did in fact have a survey that showed that that parcel was gopher free in July of 2024. So hopefully that corrects some of the information during the public comment. Also, however, that parcel has not yet received a formal site plan review approval. So therefore it is not memorialized. What the time frame is upon a gopher-free certification by the consultant, again, paid for by the developer, that timeline lasts 1 year. And then in July of 2025, the 1 year anniversary, that current gopher-free analysis will expire and then will have to be redone by the consultant to continue to be considered. Only once a formal site plan review approval is issued by the city will that be memorialized. So I hope that helps. And I'll stop there. Should there be any additional questions about that certification process?
I have a
comment. I did start my Tumwater permitting today, and they have not received a cover study that.
Warren, I was going to ask you a question, if I can remember it now. I've lost it. There was a comment inside the room, so please continue.
Okay, the survey that was done in July of 2024, because the developer Panattoni has not yet initiated a formal site plan review. In other words, they don't know exactly yet what they're going to do on that property just yet. There are about 3 or 4 different options. So as a result, Panattoni has had the survey done. They have it in their possession, but no, the city would not yet have received it. Okay, they are aware of it, but they would not have received it because Panattoni has not yet gone forward with actually a development plan for that particular parcel. But that just provides you the information that's out there, what's been done so far.
So I think that's my question, Warren. It was that if this is an advisory for them coming forward to convert to an actual ground lease, right, for a couple of the parcels.
Just for one parcel.
For one, that's okay, so the one that's in front of us is the one for which there is a gopher habitat plan submitted.
That is correct. And that habitat free consultant survey was memorialized by, I'm not sure if the mouse shows up here, but this final bullet on the screen that was issued by the city of Tumwater on March 15th of 2023. That is in your exhibit H. And you can see exactly the paragraph within that exhibit H, which shows that the parcel is free of gophers.
And until now, we often spoke of the South Sound Commons Center project as the two parcels. So
Actually, there are two parcels. Let me go ahead and move ahead, and the maps and I think depictions will help. So as we now transition into location, the green star is the location of the South Sound Commerce Center. The green lines here show the traffic presentations and expectations with regard to the I-5 Tumwater interchange down to the parcel. And you can see the location within New Market Industrial Campus as a whole, just to the west of the airport. And then here is the actual South Sound Commerce parcel of 29.27 acres. The second parcel in question, not before you tonight, but which was a part of my remarks with regard to the gopher survey, is this parcel here in between International Wood Products, Bush Middle School, and north of 83rd Avenue. That second parcel not before you, but that is the other parcel. The only parcel that we're talking about tonight for which the formal site plan review approval has been granted by the city is this parcel outlined here in yellow.
and the parcel that's not before us, is that the one where we're in conversations about releasing some land from the option to lease?
Let me come back and cover that one a little bit later. That second parcel is just still a development piece, but it's all part of the 7th Amendment that will go forward. And it's not the parcel that will actually be released because it has a revenue generating capability for the port. And we don't want to forego that. There's other property within the total remaining 146 acres of remaining option property that has not had a gopher free survey that would be a part of the lease, a release of the option property back to the port.
And Warren, I might be splitting hairs with semantics, but could you clarify, just so that everyone's clear, the difference between a survey that was done that certified that there was not gophers versus having a habitat conservation plan to manage the existence of gophers?
That's correct. Yes. So for this parcel here, with no gophers there is no mitigation requirement. In the future, if Panattoni moves forward with the city on this second parcel here, the 20.31 acres here, it is currently shown to be gopher free. There would be no mitigation requirements. The expectation is the remaining 146 acres, there will be gopher present on at least some, if not all of it. Most likely just some, because you can see there are heavily forested areas on the option property, which generally have not shown to be conducive habitat for the gopher. But all of that would be subject to determination, is it gopher occupied or not, and then what mitigation requirements would be levied upon the port as a result of the approved habitat conservation plan by Fish and Wildlife.
Thank you.
Okay. So this is the location, shows you the acreage right here. I want to point out this little yellow line over here. We'll come back and revisit this later along Center Street. And that's an important portion of where the frontage of this entire parcel along Center Street. We'll come back and talk a little bit about that a little bit later. Here is the actual visual depiction of the building. It will be a single building. It's a speculative building. We do not have tenants at this point in time. It's 477,880 square feet. And it will have a cosmetic appearance similar to this. The term sheet for the ground lease, it's a little under 1.3 million square feet. That's based on that square footage actually determines the lease payment amount. This physical address is 7847 Center Street Southwest. The initial term of the ground lease will be for 55 years with two 10-year options, so a total of 75 years. That is the maximum permissible under Washington state law on airport land. The initial lease rate will be 48 cents per square foot per year, and the total dollar amount per month of lease payments due once they begin will be just shy of $51,000 per month, just shy of $612,000 per year. The rate will adjust 10% up every 5 years for the first 25 years. And then beginning in year 26, there will be a series of fair market appraisals on the land done every 10 years to establish the lease rate value, recognizing that the lease rate will never go lower than the existing lease rate and will never exceed higher than 10%. So there is a cap along those lines. But as a result, within that range, there will be fair market value appraisals, which will help determine the rates in the out years of this agreement. Analyzing the lease effects is something that we truly want to demonstrate to the commissioners in terms of the impacts of any particular development and project brought before you. We first want to take a look at three different lenses, the first being the business development significance and the final metrics for the port, then the economic development benefit to the city and the wider region, and thirdly, the community development benefits to the broader community and within New Market Industrial Campus in particular. So first, with regard to the port, the significance of this ground lease is huge. It is the first new construction in New Market Industrial Campus since 2008. The most recent construction in the area was the tenant's lease's name is formerly as Center Street Karting. It was originally the Defy Trampoline Zone. It is now known as Sky Zone Trampoline Park. It's at 7960 Center Street, and the official occupancy for that building was on March 1st of 2008. So in 17 years, this will be the first new groundbreaking in New Market. With regard to the financial metrics to the port, the good faith cash deposit was created as a result of the 7th Amendment, and that is due and payable by Panattoni. The invoice has already been achieved and sent to Panattoni. Our accounting and their accounting departments are already in close communication, and that good faith deposit will be received before April 30th of this month. Option payments under this particular parcel would be $4,335 monthly. And that's should Panattoni not pull the city permits by July 1st of 2025. Ground lease payments, as previously mentioned, would be almost $51,000 monthly, $612,000 annually. And those payments will commence upon either the certificate of occupancy or 14 months after the lease commencement date, whichever occurs first. What is really particularly notable and what has been a direction to the commission from port staff is to increase our revenue potential. Our 2025 budget total New Market Industrial Campus revenue is just over 1.8 million. This single lease of 29 acres will increase annual revenue just shy of $612,000. This one lease will increase the total net revenue of New Market by 33.5% in just a single transaction once lease revenue begins. With regard to the city of Tumwater, first and foremost, it is consistent with Tumwater's adopted economic plan, development plan of its comprehensive plan. It is first goal number 3, grow the city's light industrial and manufacturing sectors, and goal number 6, work with Port of Olympia to develop the New Market Industrial Campus and Olympia Regional Airport. It's important to note that everything that's being done within this ground lease and within the industrial campus of New Market is in conjunction and in coordination and in compliance with the Tumwater Land Use Development Plan and its zoning plans. There were no variances and no hearing examiner needs be necessary to be dealt with. With regard to the economic and financial benefits to the city, these numbers are all estimated, but the one-time city fees to be collected include $559,000 traffic impact fee, $439,000 SEPA mitigation fee. That's for the I-5 Tumwater improvements, and the $225,000 building permit fee, $1.2 million total.
So Warren?
Yes, please.
Can you explain what traffic impact fees are used for?
So the traffic impact fees are to address, in part, there will be development. I'll cover that in a little bit here with regard to Center Street improvements. But that's also to recognize the impact of the additional truck traffic on Tumwater Boulevard and whatever road improvements may need to be made. You heard earlier tonight in the RTP presentation from TRPC that there were going to be I-5 Tumwater Boulevard improvements. In fact, Panattoni will be funding a portion of those as part of its SEPA mitigation fee.
And I think it's really important to communicate that the way that we recover the way that we complete these projects is by recovering the fees as development occurs. And so the impact of additional traffic and oftentimes beyond that is coming from development.
That is correct. And the developer is bearing a cost, a portion of the cost of those improvements as well. So I'm glad you mentioned that, Commissioner. Thank you.
And I think from a public policy perspective, we're now seeing that not moving forward multifamily housing projects and things that are politically popular. But I think it's important to understand that growth is paying for growth in these circumstances. And so it isn't that we are leaving the jurisdiction to hold the bag. We're actually helping complete necessary projects by supporting these efforts. So
that is correct. That is correct. And when we talk about the lease payments of $612,000 per year, that's the revenue to the port. Each of these additional financial numbers here are additive and cumulative on top of that. So $612,000 a year eventually to the port, one-time fee of $1.2 million here. And then on the next step here, we have an estimated one-time construction sales tax revenue direct to the city of $602,000. Now that's based upon certain assumptions, which are laid out here on the slide. Assumes $150 per square foot construction cost. And it shows that the city receives 0.84% of that sales tax on each dollar spent. So again, this is an estimated number, but these two numbers alone added up on the previous slide in this one, $1.8 million right there direct to the city. Then when we look on an annual basis, what this will mean to the city of Tumwater, based upon the size of the building to be built, estimated annual property taxes will be $496,000 plus. And that's an assumed $50 million assessed structural evaluation. Specifically, how this dollar amount will break down into different components. The city will receive over $87,000. The Tumwater School District will receive $194,000. Tumwater Metro Parks $24,000, and Timberland Library $11,000 plus. Keep in mind too that this does not include the annual sales tax or B&O tax estimates. This is purely the property tax revenue based upon an assumed structural evaluation. And those amounts are annual. Also to the city, the infrastructure improvements will be on and off-site requirements. There will be stormwater improvements, so less runoff into the streets and more protected stormwater to reduce the runoff. Frontage improvements and Center Street upgrades. The employment opportunities will include both jobs and direct and indirect wages. We cannot comment on those right now since Panattoni is building this building as a speculative building. We don't know exactly, and it can be subdivided. So it could house either one large entity, or it could be broken up into multiple parts, depending upon what the market needs. And we will obviously identify and share that with the commission once that is known. But the market is watching this development very closely. Once we have the known subtenants within the building, then we'll know the job types and wage ranges that will be identified. Ultimately, we expect that this will fall in the lines of industrial distribution and warehousing, light manufacturing, e-commerce, technology, and/or life sciences. And all of that is within the Tumwater Municipal Code zoning requirement. This is all airport-related industrial. And all of these fixes, including warehousing, fit within the zoning for Newmarket Industrial Campus. So we're completely in compliance with what the City of Tumwater's Council has approved for land use on this airport property in Newmarket. Switching now to the broader community, the development impacts here include multiple. The Interstate 5 and Tumwater Boulevard interchange will improvements. Again, that connects directly back to what we talked about in RTP 2050's vision. The Center Street roadway improvements and frontage improvements are part and parcel of the permit that will be issued to Panattoni for completing this project. Improved stormwater handling versus runoff. And the tax benefit to the city agencies, specifically the emergency services, the Tumwater School District, the Metro Parks District, and the library, all of that financial tax benefit is incurred without increasing a service load. So in other words, we're not creating more housing or additional population that will access these facilities. Funds are being provided without necessarily increasing the services that need to be provided by these individual agencies. And also, I do want to point out that there is a specific follow-up to the lease option to ground lease 7th Amendment. In particular, I'm referring to what is Section 14 of that 7th Amendment that you approved on March 10th. And specifically, this was quoted as a joint commitment to address community amenity. And quoting directly from that section of the 7th Amendment, I think this is important, is that both the Port and Panattoni commit to advance the effort to identify a suitable location within Newmarket Industrial Campus to site a community amenity with specific effort directed toward a tourism facility. So those discussions are already underway, and they include provisions by Panattoni for a pedestrian bicycle trail, the potential option property that Port Panattoni will engage in a land exchange to dedicate a parcel for future community use, and the city of Tumwater has already expressed conceptual support. So as this goes forward and we actually identify the parcels that are to be exchanged and repurposed for a community benefit, these will be memorialized in a future 8th Amendment. I don't have a time frame for you on that, but those discussions and commitments are already underway. What I also want to do here as a moment, because this ties directly into the comments that Mike Reed made before. He quoted at the end of his presentation the RCWs that directly equate to the port's role and authority to create benefits for tourism purposes. This does the same thing. So this same authority that Mike quoted earlier in his presentation for Hands-On Children's Museum applies just as well to Newmarket. So essentially what we have here is a bookends of both ends of the port properties, from the Port Peninsula all the way down to the southern end of the port's extension at Newmarket Industrial Campus, both serving the same roles in 2 different ways. And so this is an exciting development to see not only Hands-On Children's Museum go forward, but also a community opportunity that Panattoni has directly expressed support for, along with the city's agreement in concept going forward next. As also Mike pointed out in his alignment with regard to this, and what we will continue to do with all future presentations to you, is to bring forth how these projects and this particular ground lease before you aligns with the Vision 2050 and the Port Strategic Vision and Goals. In this particular case, it's focus area number 2, and that specifically is business development, infrastructure, and real estate. Goal number 1, which is right here in the light blue, to leverage the port's unique statutory authority to catalyze economic opportunities in partnership with local jurisdictions, economic development organizations. 3 action items apply here, 19, 21, and 23. I will highlight the one that is shown in the yellow border: increase the port's capacity to market core assets and attributes to attract business and job creation opportunities such as intermodal freight logistics, avionics, real estate development, recreation and tourism, agriculture, food processing and storage, and manufacturing. This also aligns with Vision 2050 with focus area 2. Again, that same business development, infrastructure, and real estate focus area. Goal number 3, which is to maximize the economic and community value of the Olympia Regional Airport in accordance with FAA Master Plan regulations, and specifically action items 31 and 34. As shown in here in the highlight, support non-air dependent manufacturing and services that can take advantage of the airport's Newmarket Industrial Campus geographic amenities and services. So all correctly aligned with this particular project. Now let's switch a little bit further into the next step in the agenda tonight. Before you is the form of ground lease review, and this is the actual document itself. And the Center Street Improvements Reimbursement Agreement, this is a little bit of a review. It's been since December of 2023. And only 4 of the 5 commissioners were seated at the time. Commissioner Vasavita, this occurred, an improvement, and this lease review occurred just the 1 month before you assumed office. But in this particular case, and what was embedded and memorialized in this is that Panattoni Development Company will pay 100% of the costs associated with Center Street improvements. There is 0 cash outlay from the port, and those improvements were required by the city of Tumwater to receive and be issued a permit for both site development and for building construction. The Center Street improvements are based upon both safety and structural improvements, and also a designated truck route. There
Warren,
are
is there
3,000.
addition
Yes,
to the traffic mitigation fees?
yes.
Thank you.
There are 3,000 feet of total Center Street length to be done, which, if you consider both sides of the street, obviously then equates to 6,000 linear feet of frontage. You may recall previously I called attention to that yellow line of Panattoni's South Sound Commerce Center frontage along Center Street. That PDC frontage is 576 linear feet, about 10% of the total. So Panattoni will receive a future ground rent credit for that portion of Center Street improvement cost other than the South Sound Commerce Center frontage. So in other words, of all the funds that are going to be expended to improve Center Street, Panattoni will pay for 10%. The port eventually will be responsible for the other 90%, but here is how that will break down. The maximum Center Street cost to the port is memorialized in the ground lease agreement as $750,000. That means the future monthly rent credit to PDC for their improvements to Center Street will be $675,000. And that equates to approximately 13 months from ground rent, from the ground rent start date. So if you recall, the annual ground rent is $612,000. So it'll be just shy of 13 months of rent credit to provide for Panattoni for their improvement. Again, 0 cash outlay from the port. And essentially what it means is that the anticipated South Sound Commerce rent credit end date will be August of 2027. That's when the dollar amount will actually begin to flow into the port's bank account. Now, that's a little bit of an upfront investment by the port, but here is how the port will then recoup that credit. It will be recovered in part from future Center Street tenants via latecomers agreements. These latecomers agreements are authorized by the Tumwater Municipal Code 12.14 under street assessment reimbursement agreements. So as for a specific example going on right now, we have one tenant with Center Street frontage who has elected to cut their Center Street frontage in half. So as a result, this new lease for that tenant just across the street from the South Sound Commerce Center will be the first reimbursable agreement to Center Street happening probably within the next few months. So as all future other properties are leased by the port or through the option property along Center Street, we will then recoup those rent credits. There will be a portion that will not be returned back to the port, and that is that portion of Center Street frontage that is already occupied by existing port tenants. There was nothing within those leases as originally crafted and currently are in effect that allows a reimbursement for a latecomers agreement. So the end result is the few tenants along Center Street that will receive the road improvements, they will have the benefit of the road improvements, but will not have a financial impact for it because it was not included in their original lease.
How many tenants is that, Warren? You can
I will
call.
have to get back to you on that, but I think there is 6 tenants, I believe.
Thank you.
With regard to the form of ground lease itself, we did add a few additional revisions to speak to some of the changes that took place. First, we had to make sure the ground lease revision, this is the one, the standard form that was approved in December 23, was consistent with the 7th Amendment provisions. We did that. We added an Exhibit H, which documents then the Center Street Southwest scope of work. We added an Exhibit I, which then graphically shows the South Sound Commerce Center frontage of 576 feet. And then we also added an Exhibit J, which then determines the actual lease certificate of commencement. You may recall I mentioned that the ground lease begins certificate of occupancy or the lease commencement date, which is 14 months from the lease commencement date. That lease commencement date is the date that Panattoni pulls the permits from the city. So we expect right after ground lease execution, Panattoni will then move to the city to pull those permits. Whatever date that is, that starts the 14-month clock running. There was also one additional change to the December 2023 template, and this one was very, very important. It goes not only to the lease summary that was unique to this particular ground lease, but also to the template that applies to all port leases in Section 37, the appraisal procedure. Essentially, one of the things that we have learned over the last few years is that the future rent calculations within our basic long-term land lease template are too obscure to be clear. They were based upon Thurston County assessments of the property. Thurston County doesn't assess land now or do a fair market value of that land value. And as a result, those provisions then are obscure and very difficult for equity and debt partners to really fully understand the financial ramifications of. So therefore, we have amended the language in that section to incorporate the current best practice today for periodic appraisal determinations of fair market value. We have used the Port of Seattle specifically as an example of what they've done for recent approval of fair market value, which has shown to be proved valuable to the equity and debt markets out there. And so we have incorporated those best practices. Specifically for this lease, fair market appraisals will be done every 10 years, beginning with the lease term year 2026, and every 10 years after that. In between, there will be the normal 10% increase of a 5-year period. The appraisals of fair market value are subject to no less than the then current rent and no greater than a 10% increase. So there will be a range. It may not be 2% per year, but it could be. But the fair market value at that time will provide a very simple formula for future port staff and the tenant to go ahead and activate and actuate, bring it to fruition. Next, also great concern, of course, for a lot of positive reasons on environmental requirements. And I want to spend a little bit of time talking about how the environmental process was done for this particular lease parcel, the South Sound Commerce Center. In 2019, the port entered into an interlocal agreement with the city of Tumwater pursuant to RCW 39.34.080. Specifically, this interlocal agreement provides that the city of Tumwater serves as the lead agency for SEPA for all project actions as defined in the WAC citing shown on all port property in Tumwater outside the airport's operations area. The airport operations area is essentially the area inside the fence. So airport property outside the fence would include the Newmarket Industrial Campus and Clean Water Center and a few other smaller parcels. The end result is that the city of Tumwater then serves as the lead agency for those project actions. And this ILA is consistent with the Tumwater Municipal Code and WAC, which both authorize a single agency or government to serve as the SEPA lead agency when multiple jurisdictions have a role. So as a result, the city was completely the SEPA agent of choice, and they ran through that entire process. Specifically, the agreements are more efficient for the participating agencies. They do lead to more consistent outcomes. And pursuant to this ILA, the city of Tumwater did serve as the SEPA lead agency for this Panattoni project action on port-owned land. In 2022, Tumwater completed the thorough SEPA process for this particular ground lease, the South Sound Commerce Center, and it resulted in the issuance of an MDNS, a mitigated determination of non-significance, and that MDNS is also included in your lease packet in Exhibit H. I will also say, in respect to the public comment before, that this SEPA analysis that the city did thoroughly looked at all of the traffic impacts and the truck traffic, and as was a direct result of both the I-5 Tumwater interchange improvements that Panattoni is responsible for, as well as the Center Street improvements as well. And that traffic analysis of the SEPA process directly led to those outcomes. The other requirement is that all traffic be directed northbound from the site to Tumwater Boulevard to I-5 and is not to be directed past Bush Middle School, as may have been a concern. I will say too, from my own personal experience, having the public comment at the beginning of the commission meeting for those issues that are germane to presentation that evening is very helpful, because that way misunderstandings, perhaps misperceptions, can be corrected directly during the presentation. So I'm directly appreciative for both the public comments and the opportunity also to set the record straight. What happens next? What will the project look like going forward upon lease execution? The first item is that the city permits are ready for immediate issuance. So that part of it from the city is ready to go. Panattoni is currently in final negotiations with its equity debt partner. This is an equity debt partner that has worked with on several other projects in the area, most recently up in Port of Seattle's territory on what's known as the Des Moines Creek project. Panattoni has received 4 bids on the project and will choose its general contractor this month from the top 2. Price is not the final determination, but it is actively looking forward to going forward, and we do expect a decision on it fairly soon. The site development, I-5 Tumwater Boulevard interchange to Center Street improvements and building construction will commence as soon as the contractor is chosen and the permits have been issued. The site development permit and the building construction permit are the 2 permits at bay. They could both be pulled at the same time, but certainly the site development permit would be pulled first. That would be a Panattoni choice as to when they would pull the permits. The first permit pulled is the one that determines the lease commencement date. Fee payments to the city of Tumwater then could therefore commence, based upon that financial impact to the city, could commence as soon as May 2025. So the next steps before the commission on April 28th, this ground lease will be brought before the commission as an action item, and the plan is to authorize the executive director to execute the ground lease. Action is planned via the consent calendar, and on the staff side, we will monitor the issuance of permits for the commencement of the option payments. Again, we expect that the permits will be issued likely the first week of May. That will establish the lease commencement date. We will then execute Exhibit J, but we will certainly be monitoring to make sure that the permits are pulled no later than July 1st. And if they're not, then option payments in the amount of $4,335 a month would immediately commence. Ground lease revenue generation then therefore would commence approximately the 3rd quarter of 2026. The rent credits would assume, and about a year later after that is when we would actually see a financial benefit then to the port. I will, as a last step, I want to share one particular quote that Len Syke is out of town at the moment, but he shared something with me that I do not think he would mind at all if I shared with you to the commission. And I will quote from an email that he sent to me. "We are generally thankful for the port's continued leadership and support, helping us navigate the obstacles and hurdles to finally bring development to Newmarket Industrial Campus and make it a reality. This next step of gaining approval to initiate the first ground lease has been 5 years in the making. We truly hope that this will establish the depth of Panattoni's commitment and evidence of our desire to create a world-class business park that we, the port, the city, and the community will be proud of." And with that, I'm happy to entertain any questions and comments, and I appreciate your patience given the length of the presentation.
Thank you, Warren. Any questions? No questions. Thanks so much. Okay. That brings us to commissioner reports and discussion. Commissioner Isle will give his report when he's back with us. I've checked with him. So we can start. Let's start with Commissioner Harding.
My quote of the day is, "Nobody makes a greater mistake than he who did nothing because he could do only a little."
Commissioner Sanders.
I don't have anything to report. I'm just happily attending all my meetings and assignments and that's about it.
I will say I met with the estuarium today. They are very excited about a potential partnership with Hands on Children's Museum and the port in any way that we can to help them. They're really thankful for Mike Reed's support, I think, in both his role in City of Olympia and also here at the port. So it sounds like that would be a good contact to continue to work with the estuarium, and they have some exciting stuff going on in there.
Terrific.
Yeah, that's all I had.
Well, you guys are making me prioritize quickly. I just wanted to, first of all, today was a pretty exciting meeting. There's a lot happening here at the Port of Olympia. I'll leave that aside. I wanted to bring up just a few things that maybe we can address in a future director's report or future meeting. So we heard from members of the public about apprenticeship utilization requirements, and I see we have a commission resolution that kind of says in general, we're going to try to do that, but the executive director has discretion to waive that. And if in the instance, for example, if FAA doesn't allow us to use them in have those in a contract, I'm not aware of any FAA prohibition on apprenticeship utilization. So I'd like to understand that more, and I'd like a briefing on that. And we heard last meeting from other union members asking about project labor agreements. And that was something that I feel like I was remissful not to ask much earlier in my tenure. And so I'd like to understand if we have any current resolutions governing that. It looks, Mike, did you want to come up and speak to that right now? Okay, well then, yeah, sure, that would be wonderful. Is that okay?
Yep. I appreciate it. That was something I'm.
You got to as well.
I just wanted to share that as the group that was here last time was actually, it was the Western States Regional Council of Carpenters. So when you saw their comment, you may have also seen me run out of the room to try to capture them. So I have connected with them, and we have had a series of conversations. I'm in learning mode with them and sort of how they operate and how we can help. Learning when or how labor agreements like that would make sense, and how we could do certain things like that. And then even outside of those, how the port can participate and advance workforce development programming and pre-apprenticeship programming. Again, I will quote RCW at you. RCW 5308245 talks about how ports can invest and participate in workforce programming and specifically in pre-apprentice programming. So there's a number of ways that we can do it. One way we can do it is through contracting. The other way that we can do it is through actual programmatic support. So when I was at the city, we did actually fund through contract with various entities pre-apprenticeship programming. So we are seeing in Thurston County right now, South Puget Sound Community College is launching a construction trades professional certification programming. There's also some pre-apprenticeship programming that occurs in DuPont. There's a facility there. So what I'm working on actively right now is meeting with some of the unions to understand how does their pre-apprenticeship training programs work. You have probably heard this. I will echo it though. We have a nationally, regionally, and locally, we have a significant problem in the loss of labor not keeping up in the construction trades. We're seeing a declining workforce in that. So supporting workforce growth in the construction trades becomes critical if we want to be able to continue to build and grow. So I'm exploring and having conversations with them. I don't have anything ultimately to report, but I did want you to know that I grabbed them. We're in conversations and exploring more opportunities there.
And you didn't quote the RCW that mentions that ports can play a role in supporting workforce development, but that's.
Oh, that was it not 245?
Did you?
Yeah, 53
So
that one.
That would be great. And then I see Warren's coming back on, Warren, and we have through the consent agenda approved moving forward on that project at the airport. And I just to finish my commissioner's report, I had a chance to visit the airport last week. go around the runways and see that area that is going to be repaved. There's literally kind of like, you know, dandelions growing up in the cracks, and it's not good to have cracks when you are, it's not good when you have like a jogging stroller, and it's certainly not good when you have an airplane. So what has been happening is the airport has been doing vegetation management. They go out and burn off. There you are, Mr. Pellegrini. I didn't know you were here. But making sure it's very important for all the people using the runways that they be clear and free. That said, Warren, were you going to speak to apprenticeship utilization at the airport?
Well, that I was going to just add to Mike's comments with regard to the South Sound Commerce Center, in particular with regard to labor presence going forward, is approximately that Panattoni fully expects and has been the case with all the contractors that they've used on their projects throughout Puget Sound, is that the roof and steel workers will be primarily utilized, and that the remainder will be a split mix of union versus non-union workers. Ultimately, they expect the South Sound Commerce Center will have about approximately a 50% union labor component, if that's helpful.
And I guess just could you clarify, Mike, as far as what you're talking about with the RCW and workforce, all of the revenues raised at the airport stay in the airport. So that would be an opportunity for us to invest in workforce development on the airport without creating, I think, sorry. I guess my bias is that sometimes we try and manipulate what we're asking for, and our goal out here is what we want, but we try and manipulate things to try and create it when we might be able to just directly support it through the revenues that we're making by activating our properties. So is that accurate?
That's correct. And it said better than I did. So, but yes, if and when we have more revenues to work with, it does allow us organizationally to invest in other new kinds of programming. And it absolutely is supported in RCW that we can invest in and support programming like workforce development programming and pre-apprenticeship programming. So I do not see a problem that if you sold a piece of property or you got a new lease on something, that if what we're trying to do is say we want to take a portion of those proceeds and invest in the entities that do the kinds of training for this kind of workforce, you can do that with the revenue that you generate. And I'd be more than happy to bring forward those kinds of opportunities.
And I just hope we as a commission consider that, because from my real estate bias, if you want more of something, make it easier. And so using housing as an example, we've made it harder to build, so we're getting less of it. And if we want more apprentice program, we want more, how do we make that easier rather than making it harder from a policy? And that circles all the way back to the TRPC presentation of zooming out and how do we focus on actualizing our goals, not just doing things that are performative, that actually keep us further away from realizing our goals. So I would love to continue to hear more about those opportunities.
And I would just like to thank my fellow commissioners for allowing this sort of free-form discussion during our commissioners' reports. My last thing I want to is, let everyone know is I know for a fact that the Port of Olympia is enforcing the 30-day rule for transient vessels at the marina. And I know that because I know a former ranking member from the House of Representatives has been booted. And he didn't tell me to complain. He recognized that he had overstayed his 30-day permit. So that is to say that I get the sense the marina is enforcing its rules as effectively as it can. And look forward to further conversation on it. All right, well, with that, let's see. Other business, we have none, but we'll move to meeting announcements. Director Smith.
Okay. Momentarily, we will have meeting announcements. All right, coming up tomorrow evening at 5 p.m. in this very room, we have the Port of Olympia Advisory Committee meeting, its regular monthly meeting. 2 weeks from tonight is our next regular commission business meeting on Monday, April 28th, and that's at 5:30 p.m. right here in this room. And then the next regular business meeting for the commission is on Monday, May 12th. And the next month's Citizens Advisory Committee is on May 20th at 5 p.m. And that's it.
Terrific. Thank you, everyone, for coming and sticking it out, and we